Happy Monday, knitters. Welcome back to my channel. I'm Louise from Wildflower Wool, and you will find me here every Monday with a brand new video showing you two new projects that I'm casting on to work on for this upcoming week. The first one will be a dishcloth because I have a goal of doing 52 dishcloths a year. The second project will be something random using some yarn out of my stash because I have a very well-stocked stash, and one of 2020's goals is to knit from my stash, or at least be a little more balanced. Knit more from my stash than what I purchase. So we'll see. So far we're into February and my stash busting challenge is going really quite well. So let's kick off. I'll show you what my first project is that I'm casting on for this week. This is my new dishcloth. The pattern is the Four Corners dishcloth, and this is a start of one of the first four corners. It is a free pattern on Ravelry. If you search for the number 4 corner dishcloth, it will come up. It's a free pattern, so I highly suggest going, grabbing it, and putting it in your library. It is knit with short rows, and as you can tell, I have started here. You can see on this end where my rows are getting shorter as I go along. And I think this is about 10 rows of knitting done. You do one corner and then you just rotate around. And at the end, we're gonna seam it together. The pattern, right off the bat, I've made a modification because it says to do an invisible cast on, but what I think they're meaning is like a provisional cast on. So you have live stitches here, and then you graft them together at the end. As you go around knitting your 4 corners, you'll join your cast on edge and your cast off edge. You will Kitchener stitch them together. But I just cast on, and I'll just whip stitch it together. So we'll see. I may regret that at the end, but I'm thinking, it's just a dishcloth. I could have went and got a crochet hook and some waste yarn and did a provisional cast on around the crochet hook. But I didn't feel like jumping up to get it. So we'll see if this modification, if it makes a big deal. I mean, the worst thing I can see is it's going to make a little bit, I'll have a little bit of a seam there, right? But I'm thinking, it's a dishcloth. If I was making this, if this was a bigger version into a baby blanket or a shawl, then I would have done a provisional cast off. But I'm thinking for a dishcloth, having a little seam there, it's not going to be a big deal. The other question I have about this, I'm doing it in white. Look at this poor ball. It's obviously been used for something, and I've pulled it out and reclaimed the yarn and just wound this all up. This, I can tell again by the feel of it that this is more the Bernat Handicrafter. I'm not sure how much is here, but I know for sure there's lots, way more than I will need to do this one dishcloth. Question for everybody. Have you had any luck doing, I'm thinking a dishcloth, a face cloth out of white? As far as getting dirty and looking well, like how long you'll be able to use it before it looks unsightly being white? I'm not sure. But anyways, I don't know why I bought all this white and I've never really used it. Probably because of that, because I'm concerned that it's probably, I don't know how well it's going to look, how white it will stay after a few uses. But I guess I'll find out. So that's concern number 1. I'm not sure about the color. And the second is the pattern, because I'm thinking that with the short rows, it would show up probably nicer. And as I'm going around this like the rows of knitting, so I've got 19 stitches on here. So each corner is going to be 19 stitches. And as you go around, the direction of your knitting, I think, is going to change. So if it was variegated, you would have those different directions of your knitting. You know what I mean? So you'll see like some visual interest, right? And I'm not so sure that we're going to get the full effect of that using a solid color, whether it's solid white or if it was solid blue. I mean, you will, because it's garter stitch, so you're going to see the ridges, so you will see somewhat as it goes around, but not as striking as if it was like a variegated, right? But there again, it's a dishcloth and I have all this weight and I need to use it up. So this is what I'm doing. So we'll see how it looks. Next Monday, I'll give you my feedback, what I think about it. But I think it's going to be really fun. So it's using short rows. So you're just, every row is getting shorter. You knit 19 stitches, then you're 18, then you're 17, you're 16, just one row short until you get down to the end. And then I think you're picking up some stitches and carrying on. Haven't read that far in the pattern. I got carried away and wanted to start this. Anyways, new start number 1, dishcloth. For my weekly dishcloth is on track, started, and I like it. It's fun. So far, I'm enjoying it. Cast on number 2 is this little guy here. On a few different social media platforms, I think over on the Fiber Friends Friday Night Knit-In Facebook group, we were talking about mitered squares and making blankets and pillows. This is the start of my first mitered square, and I have high hopes of making a blanket, but I also think these would look really cute in pillows too. So I'm not sure what this is going to be. I'm just going to start and see where I end up. This is a guild project. There is a few of us in guild that have decided that we're going to do that. This is a year-long challenge for us to see how many squares we actually get knit. So I know some of my other guild members, they have got quite a few other squares done. I'm a few weeks behind getting started, but that's all right. We did a little bit of a yarn swap. So I know I said right off the bat that I really want to use up, I've got a bunch of little balls here I'm going to show you, some of my stash yarn. Well, some of this is mine. It's all fingering weight sock yarn that we're using. We collectively gathered up all of our part balls, those little bits that you have left over after you finish a pair of socks or whatever you're using your fingering weight yarn with. And we all brought them into guild. We literally dumped bagfuls of sock yarn in the middle of the table, and we had so much fun. We were just, ooh, you know, like there's a blue, there's an orange, there's a pink, there's whatever your colors were, whatever your color preferences are, there was tons to choose from. So we just traded. We brought in scales and just wound up. They're about 8-gram balls. Some are a little bigger, some are a little smaller, some probably, I think I wound mine, the smallest might have been 6 grams because doesn't really matter. I'm not super picky. If my little mitered square, if it takes 7 grams and say this ball's only 6 grams, I will knit this up and then I'll just end it off with this because it's just going to be a scrappy quilt kind of look. I'm not going to think too much about the colors other than just trying not to have, you know, like maybe 2 oranges side by side. Just mix it up a little bit. So we just traded yarn. So I have got lots of sock bits around. So some of this project will be using up some of my odd little bits that are just left over, and what do you do with them instead of just tossing out those little balls? This is a really good project to realize that, 8 grams of little leftover yarn can actually turn into a really cute little project. So what I'm doing, or what I have done, I've grabbed a 3mm needle. I've cast on 48 stitches and working this in garter stitch. I've got my sheep is backwards. Let me turn him around so you can see him. So I've got a really cute little sheep stitch marker on here that is marking the center of my little block here. And the whole idea is just you're just knitting across. You get to 2 stitches before the marker. You knit those 2 together, slip your marker out of the way, knit the next 2 stitches through the back loop, which will lean it to the left. Because as we know, a knit 2 together leans to the right. Which way is this? Does this look right for you guys? I know. Anyway, it leans to the right. If you knit through the back of the loop, it twists it and it leans it the opposite way. It leans it to the left. So that way we're going to have symmetrical decreases here. And as you can see, I'll move my little sheepy out of the way. Doing those 2 decreases is pulling up the sides of my block. So I'm getting this really cute little point here. So this has started 48 stitches. I'm not entirely sure what my finished size block will be, but there again, I'm not real concerned because I think I'm going to carry, I think this is going to be a blanket. I guess if I was doing a pillow, I'd have to be a little more concerned because I'd have to know the size of my pillow form. And I would have to adjust that to make sure I get something that's going to fit the pillow form. But I think I'll be ambitious. I think I'll aim high and say this will be a blanket. A lap blanket, a baby blanket. I don't know what size, but I'm just going to keep going. I want the whole year to just putter away at this. Do a little block every, couple of weeks or something maybe. Would be a good goal. And that's my start. And every time I look at this yarn, I can't say for sure this was not my ball of yarn, but sock yarn in shades of blue with glitter in it. I am guessing that this came from my friend Amanda. Would be a pretty good choice. And this is my first block. So every time I look at this, Amanda, I'm going to think of you because I'm sure this came from your stash. So again, next Monday, we'll come back here and we'll see how this turned out. I'll give you some finished dimensions and hopefully I've carried on. If for some reason I think it's going to be too big or too small, then how I would easily change that is just by changing the number of stitches. Just count this as like my gauge swatch. And if I want it a little bit bigger, I will add on multiples of 2. I want to have an even number. So I've got 48 on here, so I could go 50, 52, 54 if I want them bigger. If I think it's a little bit too big, I could go down to 46 or 44. I could change my needle size as well, but I'm pretty happy with the fabric that it's making. I wanted to go, I know this sounds a little silly, but I wanted to go a little bit bigger needle than I wanted or than I use for my socks. I use a 2.25 millimeter for my socks. And this is the funny part, right? Thinking, oh my gosh, if I knit with a 2.25, this blanket's going to take me forever. But which is the ironic part, right? Because a 3 millimeter needle is not a whole lot bigger and it is still fingering weight and it is still going to be a blanket. So this is going to be a lot of knitting no matter really what size needle I use. But anyways, I'm feeling a little bit better that I'm using a little bit bigger needle, and so it's going to go a little bit faster. So there you go. So 2 options to adjust it if I don't like it. I could change my needle size and just add or subtract stitches for my start on, my cast on, and go from there. So this really is a sample, but I'm liking the fabric, so I think whatever size it ends up being, I'll just carry on with that. So those are my 2 new starts. I'll give you a little peek into what else I was knitting this past week. Last week's new starts. Let me show you those. There was, again, a dishcloth, which I finished. Look at this. Oh my gosh, you guys, we could do a little happy dance. You guys want to do a happy dance with me? Look at this. This gray, this ball of Knit Picks Dishy that I have been working on for the last how many weeks. That has been, what, 3, I got at least 3 dishcloths out of it, and this was the last 2 little bits. This never-ending ball is now finished, and the ball band has been put into, I'll show you. my box. This pretty box that I have that I'm collecting. Oops, collecting ball bands. So I'm there again. I'm aiming big. I'm thinking I'm going to get a good. I'm not thinking I'll get the Mitred Square fingering weight blanket finished this year, but I'm hoping to get a good start on it. And I also have this fairly big, nice box, good sized box to put all my finished ball bands in, because you know you gotta think big, right? So my ball band for Dishy, look at that right there, colorway ash, finished in the finished ball band box, which makes me very happy. So this was using my super simple diamond dishcloth pattern. There, I started down here. I started with the ash, and I think in last week's video I had a handful of little balls, and one was orange and white, orange and yellow, and pink. And oddly enough, I did not end up using those balls in this dishcloth. That little tiny bit of pink, when I went to switch colors, I couldn't find it. So I have since found it. So it is back in my dishcloth knitting project bag for another dishcloth. But anyways, I kind of went with these purples, and then I found this one here that's got a light lilac-y purple variegated. Then I finished off every last bit of that ash color, went back to this, and then just finished off with a little bit of beige to tie, I don't know, tie it in. I don't think it really ties it in, but anyways, that's what it is. Super simple diamond dishcloth, easy peasy. It really only takes a couple hours to knit. You're just doing knit front and back for the first half, and then you knit two together to decrease it back down. Really easy. And I just carried my colors up the sides. I think I used a 4mm needle for this. I think I went up to 38 stitches, and then I decreased down. I carried, no, I did not carry. I didn't carry any colors up the side on this. So I just did a chunk. I cut off the gray. I joined in the purple, cut it off. Actually, I think I finished all of this. And then I joined this in, cut. So I had a few ends to weave in on the back, but it looks fine. So one more dishcloth finished. And also in last week's video, I told you that the week before I did not get my dishcloth finished. It was that V-stitch dishcloth. Well, I did get it finished. And this is the I Love This Cotton in the Sunshine colorway, and it is really nice and soft. So I will put, now the only thing is, this is huge. It ended up huge. And that's okay. So I'm thinking the B stitch from what I am taking away from this is, it is a loose stitch, because I used the same size needle and put on 38 stitches. And it's really a whole lot wider than this here is. Okay, this is 38 across this way. And this is 38 across this way. It's not that, it seems a whole lot bigger. But it's, I don't know. If I just look at it, hold it up this way. Let's go this way. Yeah, see? A whole lot bigger. Anyways, that's okay. Some people like larger dishcloths, right? But it is definitely very nice and soft. It would make a really nice face cloth. I also told you that I would leave you, oops, and I can see a mistake in here. That's okay. That was a knit night. This will be a memory of a knit night. Let's look at it this way. We'll ignore. Actually, maybe there's two in there. Anyways, this is a 4-row repeat that maybe you don't want to knit at knit night. because even though I was keeping track of my rows on my phone, I think obviously I did. I got my pattern mixed up because every other patterned row, you're offsetting your nip below stitches. So if you don't do that, they stack on top of one another. So see right here, I've got 2 pattern rows the same across here, and then I've alternated again. But there again, it is a dishcloth. If this was a garment, I would have taken that back. It's a dishcloth. And I'm on a deadline to get these guys done. So my dishcloths, I'm not going to be too picky about. These are going to be considered big gauge swatches, right? So if you've never done B-stitch before, I will leave the pattern description in the drop box below. And why don't you cast on one and give it a try? It's fun. It is really, really fun, and it's cute. Like, it doesn't give you a great textured stitch. This would be great as a sweater, as mitts, as a hat. I know. So try it out. And a dishcloth is the perfect way to try the pattern out, right? You kind of get an idea of what your gauge is like, what you're going to need for needle size, if you like the pattern, if you like doing the stitch before you commit to a bigger project. So, done. And because this was bigger, this used a big chunk of that ball of I Love This Cotton, but it is not done. So its ball band is not in the box yet. Maybe next week I'll go back to it and finish that up. But anyways, B-stitch dishcloth is done. Super simple dishcloth is done. So that gives me 2 more finished dishcloths. And I am back on track for having 1 a week. This ball of yarn, remember we talked a bit about this, and I was starting a mitt, my super simple mitten pattern. And look at this, you guys. I am glad. Remember we talked about how I was thinking how my ribbing looked really big, and about, you know, just being aware of your knitting compared to what the pattern says, right? Don't blindly follow a pattern. Think about what your gut is telling you. If you think it's going to be too big or too small, which is good advice, which I always want you, whether you're following my pattern or somebody else's, to always think that, right? Just be aware of how it's knitting up. And if you're second guessing yourself, really listen to that little voice. The other thing I said about this mitten was I didn't have a whole lot of ribbing done. Remember I held it up and it was like, it looked like almost like, I don't know, there was a good chunk wider than my wrist last week, which was making me really second guess, thinking, maybe my yarn is a little thick for the pattern. It was going to end up too big. But I also said you have to do a good chunk of ribbing before the pulling in effect takes part. And that is exactly what was going on with this mitten. Even though it looked really big to start with, I kept going because I wanted to see how this ribbing would pull in. And look at this. It fits perfect. So I think last week I said, after my little rant about, you know, being a smart knitter and looking and thinking and deciding for yourself if you think it's working up the way it should, that you need to, you know, trust your gut instinct or, you know, whatever. And now this week's moral of the story is trust the pattern. So I guess somewhere in there, you got to find the middle ground, right? Trust that the pattern designer, who in this case, I was second guessing myself, which I think is hilarious. But trust the designer knows what they're doing, but also be mindful, right? That you're watching and making sure that things are going how you want them to go. So look at this. It turned out perfect. So I'm glad I kept going. That ribbing did pull in nicely. It fits nice and snug. I was having so much fun knitting this, you guys. I actually knit about 1 inch longer a cuff. I was kind of aiming for about 3.5 inches, and I just kept going round and round and round, and I knit a 4.5 inch cuff, which is fine. The only thing you want to be careful of is that you don't use up too much of the ball, because you want to make sure you have enough for the second mitt. But mitts do not take a lot of yarn, so I wasn't too concerned about that. So I did 2x2 ribbing on my 3.75 millimeter DPNs, 4.5 inches. And then there are just some plain rounds. I like putting in enough plain rounds before you start increasing for the gusset that it doesn't pull upwards. Did some gusset increases. I've got my thumb on a holder, and now I've just cast on again to get back in the round after those thumb stitches are taken off, and just knit round and round. So now I'm up to the top of my pinky, which is, yeah, right where that's my measuring stick right there. Knit to about the end of your pinky finger, and now I will do some simple decreases, and this will be done. But you know what I want to do? And then I will start mitten number 2, and I will work on that this week as well. Because this could be a finish, you guys. I have this envisioned in my head doing some embroidery on the back. So this could be one of those things that looks better inside my head than what the finished product might be on the outside. I'm thinking some lazy daisy stitches and French knots and like a stem stitch or a chain stitch or something to do a little bit of a stem and a leaf. I don't know. I'm thinking nice green and pink flowers. So we'll see. But as long as the knitting part's done, that's what I'm going to call finished. The embellishing will just be an extra added bonus. But I was pretty happy. This really was just one afternoon's worth of knitting this week. It really went by really quick once I actually sat down and worked on it. Well, I'm happy with that. I have a few more things to show you if you want to stick with me a little bit longer. My European road trip shawl. This is another thing I'm super happy about. Look at this, you guys. I finished the first ball. I have got, look at this, just this little tiny tail. I played a little bit of yarn chicken. I did an extra row on here. I kind of measured out what I had for a length of yarn, and I figured 3 lengths of yarn, 3 times the width of my knitting. So this is the width that I'm working on. So to know if I had enough yarn to do that one last row, I took the tail that I had left of my yarn and I just ran it down the length of my shawl 3 times. I went across once, and then I pulled it back a second time and went across again 3 times. So because it takes, am I describing that right? 3 times the width of your project is about how much yarn it takes to knit a row. I think that makes sense, right? Anyways, I did that, and I was getting a little concerned, but I made it, just that little bit. So this ball band went into the finished box. So I now have 3 ball bands in here, guys. 1 dishcloth, the pink variegated brioche shawl that I did, and ball 1 of my European road trip shawl. I know, 3 ball bands. I'm pretty happy. I don't know, 3. Hopefully I'll get a few more than that, more than 1 or 2 a month. Anyways, I'll never get my box filled at that rate. But anyways, I'm feeling like I'm off to a good start. So I just have to join ball number 2 on here, and you can see I've got my increases finished. And look at this, the start of my straight edge. And I'm just going to keep working away on this, doing a few rows every night or so, hopefully. And 1 more of my cast-ons. This again was from a few weeks ago. Do you recognize this lovely hand-dyed ball of yarn from my stash? And look at this, this is a Hitchhiker, and it actually has some points on it now. So I'll count this as 1, 2, 3, 4 points. This is an 8-row repeat, so every time I sit down I've been doing 8 rows, so I get a point. Now, as I'm going, the shawl obviously is getting wider, so at some point my rows are going to start getting wider. So right now, this feels like it is zooming along. To get 8 rows knit, you're doing some increasing, and then you're casting off some stitches to make these points. It's going really, really fast. So I'm feeling, again, like I'm zooming along on this, just getting a point. Every time I sit down, do 8 rows, get a point. 8 rows and get a point, and I feel like I am making super fantastic progress. So I'm happy with what I got done this week, everybody. Still feeling organized, still feeling like I'm getting my stash used up. I have not bought any yarn yet this year, which is pretty amazing for me. I have got 2 new projects on the go. I'm excited for this dishcloth. I'm excited to get my Mitred Square done to see what my actual size is going to be. I think it's going to be a fantastically wonderful knitting week, you guys. So what have you cast on? I would love to hear what you're working on. Leave me a message in the comments below. And also let me know what you think about white dishcloth cotton. Is there a better use for white, like something more decorative? I'm wondering if I bought a bunch of red and white, like to do Valentine's decorations with or something. I don't know. Anyways, I have a lot of white that I'm not so sure. I don't know. Do I want to take the time to make it into a face cloth or a dishcloth? I don't know. What are your comments? Do you have any experience with it? Because I have a lot. Or do you have a better suggestion of what I could make with it? I liked everybody's comments last week about my sweater. I have not come across any more balls of yarn, but I haven't really looked too hard either, so I'm not panicking yet. I'm hoping I have the yarn to do the sleeves, but a lot of people just said, just make it into a vest. And maybe I might have to if I can't come across any more balls, but I'm pretty sure I have to have a couple. It wouldn't be like me to have underbought yarn. So I'm not going to press the panic button on that, but a lot of people suggested just make it into a vest. And then I wouldn't have to worry about the sleeves fitting, because that was my biggest concern about the size. I don't know. Maybe it might just become a vest regardless. I have to do a little thinking on that. But anyways, I love chatting with everybody in the comments.